So today we're going to be talking about a seasonal conversation starter, and it's what's your favorite thing about summer? Now, let's talk about why this question is a good conversation starter so that you can understand it seems like a simple question, but actually, in a real conversation, it's a little more complex. It's really going to give you the chance to connect in conversation with another person. So, what's your favorite thing about summer? And depending on what season you're in, you might say, what's your favorite thing about winter? I know some of my viewers are living in South America, and so it is winter there. So, you might want to ask that kind of question. Or maybe it's winter and you want to feel kind of excited about you want to feel excited about the possibility of summer returning again. So maybe you will ask, what's your favorite thing about winter? And you can also ask something like, what's your favorite thing about spring? What's your favorite thing about fall? It really depends on your country, the climate. Some countries there's really just summer and winter, or there's rainy season and dry season. So I want you to adjust this question to your situation. But today, because it is middle of summer here in the United States, it's the middle of July, it's hot, it's humid, it is summer. So I want to talk about summer, at least from my perspective. But you can use any season here or any particular month. You can really vary this question. So that's why it's a great conversation starter. So, as we've talked about in previous episodes of Conversations with Kim, we're talking about questions that are open-ended. So, let's remind ourselves what we mean by open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are questions that get the other person talking. You're not requiring a specific response or a yes/no answer. Instead, you're allowing the other person to share the information that they want to share about themselves. Even questions like, what do you do or where are you from, which we've talked about in previous episodes, can be a little more closed because you're requiring the person to give you a specific answer. But a question like, what's your favorite thing about summer? What's your favorite thing about winter? This question is open. This allows the other person to decide the direction of the conversation. So first, we're going to talk about asking this as a good question, and then we'll talk about giving a strong answer. But as we go through the explanation, I really want you to think about how you can use this question in order to connect in conversation with an English speaker or somebody who speaks English from another country. Okay, so the goal of open-ended questions are leaving the answer, the choice of the answer to the other person. So as you collect conversation questions and learn more about them in your English learning journey, think about open-ended questions, ones that allow the other person to take control. It's actually a more generous move in most circumstances because it allows the other person to be able to choose how they want to respond to you. And when you are forcing the person to respond to specific questions like, where are you from? What do you do? Those kind of questions are more closed because they feel like more like an interrogation. So when you are trying to make small talk, or you're meeting someone in a networking event, or even you've done all the kind of typical questions, oh, where are you from? What do you do? What are you doing here? You want to go more deep into the conversation with them. This is a great question. What's your favorite thing about summer? It sounds simple, it sounds even a little silly, but it's actually a really deep question that can help you learn a lot about the other person. So depending on the answer to the question, what's your favorite thing about summer, you can learn a lot about the person. And let's talk a little bit about what I mean. So you can learn about his or her favorite activities. That's basically what you're asking with the question. We're saying favorite thing. You could say, what's your favorite thing to do in the summer? But generally, when people answer the question, what's your favorite thing about summer, they're going to name something related to an activity, or maybe not. Maybe they love the weather, or they love that the flowers are in bloom, or something like that. But you're probably going to learn a little bit about his or her favorite activities, hobbies, and you might actually find out something about what the person likes about his or her city. And when I give you my response, that's actually my first inclination to respond, is what I like about my city. You might actually hear some negative things depending on the person and their attitude. They might tell you what they don't like about summer. A lot of people complain about the heat or the humidity in summer. I don't. It doesn't bother me too much, but some people do. So maybe you can start commiserating or sharing your complaints about summer. You never know. It depends on the person. Or in winter. Winter in Boston, everyone complains because there's snow. It's hard to drive. It's hard to walk. It's hard to ride your bike. Forget it. It's really challenging. So you might hear people start complaining. Or if somebody answers the question with something they really love about summer that you didn't consider, it can give you more things to appreciate about summer, or more things to appreciate about spring, more things to appreciate about fall, more things to appreciate it's a hard word, about winter. So that can be a really interesting conversation starter, and you can keep evolving the conversation from there based on their response. This is a really great question. For example, a lot of people in the Nordic countries in the north of Europe have a lot of interesting things they do in winter that Americans kind of are interested in learning about. There's books about this particular approach to winter because we usually are just kind of negative. So you might learn something new about a way to really value and make the best out of winter, which is not usually people's favorite season unless they like skiing. It can really, a question as simple as what's your favorite thing about summer? What's your favorite thing about winter? What's your favorite thing about spring or fall can really give you insight into the other person because it's what they initially want to respond. Their first response is going to give you a lot of clues about their personality, about their interests, about the way they use their time, and you're going to be able to see how the conversation goes from there. This is also why this is a great, I've said it's a conversation starter, but it can also be a good way to change the subject or move the conversation along, especially let's say you're sitting next to someone on the bus or the plane and you want to find something else to talk about. This is a good way to pivot the conversation, to turn or steer the conversation into another direction where you can see where it goes. The great thing about this type of question, and which is why I encourage you guys to really learn these type of questions, is that you don't have to control the direction of the conversation. You're not responsible for it. It's a joint effort to create a better conversation. So I hope you're learning that from this explanation. Okay, so I mentioned a couple of things that you might learn about the other person. Like I said, their response might be something like a physical or an outdoor activity. So if you're trying to understand if they're an outdoorsy person, they're a person who likes being outside, that's something you're going to learn. If their response is something about being inside, you're going to learn about them. Maybe they have quieter hobbies that they do at home inside the air-conditioned house. You'll learn a little more about what is most interesting to them, at least right now. You'll also be able to find out something about whether they have a favorite vacation, right? Some people, they might have an annual vacation, which means every year they do the same thing with their family or their friends. And so you can learn a little more about their routines year after year, or maybe a specific getaway. For example, July 4th is in the summer, the Independence Day weekend in the United States. So a lot of people have habits or routines. They have particular things they do every July 4th weekend. Some of my friends have a party every weekend because it's my friend's birthday. I think it's her husband's birthday too. So they have this big party, a cookout where they have a barbecue, people go swimming, all the kids go over, all the dogs come over, and everybody hangs out and has a really good time the entire day. So this is an annual routine. It's an annual this is actually a stay-at-home situation. But these type of answers can really tell you about the person and what's important to them. If my friend were answering the question, you would have learned that family, friends, children, pets are really important to her, which is true. So you learn a lot from that response. What else can you say? So you might learn something about somebody's holiday, anniversary, or their birthday. My birthday is in August, so my birthday happens every summer. So that's something I can say, potentially. That's not my first response, but some people will say, well, my birthday's in July, my birthday's in June, my birthday's in August or September, and they might start sharing why they love their birthday. You never know. It really depends on the person and their responses. So what I hope you understand from this explanation is that when you ask somebody, what's your favorite thing about summer? The conversation can go in many different directions. So the question we've been talking about is, what's your favorite thing about summer? Which is very open-ended, but you can be a little more specific. And so I have a couple of related questions I want to help you with so that you have more ideas. Maybe it doesn't flow out of your mouth when you're trying to say it. So one of the questions I have is, what's your favorite thing to do each summer? So you're basically, when you say each summer, you're asking the person to tell you about their routines, something that they do frequently, because that can be really interesting. You learn what's important to the other person. How do you make the most out of summer? How do you make the most out of summer? When we make the most out of something, we really take advantage of it. We really appreciate it. We really make sure we embrace the opportunity. So how do you make the most out of summer? What do you do to make the most out of summer? Because you can also say this for winter. Maybe it's really cold, but you make the most out of winter by reading your favorite books, which you wouldn't do in summer because you'd be too busy outside doing physical activities. So how do you make the most out of summer? Something I definitely don't do here in Boston, but I used to go to the beach all the time in San Diego and also when I lived in Lima in the summer. So I make the most out of the summer by taking every opportunity to go to the ocean. So how do you make the most out of summer? Think about that question and be sure to answer these questions in the chat box. So basically the question is, what's your favorite thing about Boston in the summer? And my response to this is my favorite thing about Boston in the summer is to ride my bike on the bike path, which is, a path that in Boston and in many cities in the United States, all the former railroad trails, and I'm sure this is common in other countries, where the railroad used to be, now that we fly and we don't really need railroads as much, they have created bike paths so people can walk and run, take their babies and their dogs for walks and ride bikes. And my favorite thing to do in Boston in the summer is to ride my bike along the bike path because it goes throughout Boston. It's usually, there's lots of trees like you see here, trees, so it's not super hot. You feel the wind in your hair. You feel very active and like fresh is the word that came to my mind. So when you ask somebody, what's your favorite thing about Boston in the summer? What's your favorite thing? For example, Cesar, what's your favorite thing about London in the summer? He gave an answer about just appreciating the sun, but maybe it's a farmer's market. Maybe it's, the ocean where you live. Maybe there's a typical holiday celebration. For example, in Boston in the summer, they have the Boston Pops do the 4th of July celebration. People watch it every year. There's free concerts, there's free movies outside. So this kind of question, especially if you're new to the city or you're new to the region, or even if you're just visiting, asking a question, what's your favorite thing about Boston in the summer, being specific about your city, being specific about even your country, but your region. What's your favorite thing about New England, which is the area around Boston? What's your favorite thing about New England in the summer? You might learn something new. And as we talked about in one of the previous episodes, you're showing that you're interested in learning about the other person's story or their country or whatever, their region. When you show interest in somebody else's city, they love to give you suggestions. So it makes it a stronger question. It's also good if you're new to an area, or maybe you're just bored with what you usually do and you want to learn more. So what's your favorite thing about Boston in the summer? Another similar question I have is, what do you look forward to each summer? So what is something that when you look forward to something, it makes you feel excited? So what do you look forward to each summer? You look forward to, like you guys were all saying, the beach, swimming, wearing less clothes, right? Wearing fewer clothes because you can feel more free. Maybe it's a certain type of food. One of you mentioned watermelon and ice cream. Those are actually, I love watermelon. I buy a watermelon every week. I also love fresh berries. So you might look forward to buying flowers. I look forward to the farmer's market, riding my bike. I like riding my bike at night when it's warm. It's so lovely, right? So these are things that you can say what you look forward to. And it shows the person, when you say look forward to, it encourages the person to really engage, to really think about something that makes them happy rather than complaining about the heat and the humidity. They can say something positive. And then you can also say, what are you looking forward to this fall, winter, or spring, if you're transitioning at the end of the summer into another season. Right now, when we're recording, it's the middle of summer, so I chose a typical question to talk about the summer now. So I really want you guys, when you're answering this question, what's your favorite thing about summer, or the other related questions I talked about a few moments ago, I want you to think about your answer when responding. What is the impression that you want the other person to have of you, right? So think about your responses. Think about your answer. What's the impression you want the other person to have of you? So think about what you want them to know. So sometimes you might want to complain like, oh, the humidity and the heat. when I lived in Lima, people basically small talk a lot of times in the summer is, oh, it's so hot. Like that was like your typical small talk conversation. So maybe if it's culturally expected, your response should be something maybe a little complainy. But you might have a lot of things to say about summer. Maybe you want to talk about your favorite clothes, because maybe you really love buying new swimsuits or bathing suits. Maybe you really like talking about food. We just talked a lot about mangoes because we all love mangoes if we have the opportunity to eat them, right? You might want to talk about, what else could you talk about? Your favorite activities. You might want the person to know that you're an outdoorsy person. In Boston, people expect you to answer with an activity. Maybe you like being inside, or maybe you have another activity that you might want to talk to the person about. It just, you have to judge your interaction with that person to know what kind of response that you should give, right? So anytime you have these open-ended questions, when someone asks them, there's no wrong answer. I really want you to understand that. There's no wrong answer to an open-ended question. But if you want to have a stronger answer to an open-ended question, you really want to think about, how can you engage the other person in conversation? How can you get them sharing their own experiences? How can you get them asking you more questions? And how can you share something they might relate to? Sometimes you may be wrong. The person won't relate to you whatsoever because they're not good. They're either not good at conversation, they're boring, maybe you just don't have a lot of things in common. But just based on your situation, where you are, is it a networking event? Is it a stranger on the bus? Is it a stranger at an outdoor concert or movie? Is it a stranger you met while riding your bike on the bike path? Then you might want to say something that will engage the other person. So just judge the situation, judge the person or your impression of them so far, and then respond in a way that will encourage the conversation. Remember, these Conversations with Kim episodes are really geared towards helping you understand how to keep the conversation going. Because fluency, no matter what people tell you, fluency is not perfection. Fluency is about connecting with the other person. It's about finding a way to keep the conversation going. You'll feel more fluent as long as you're talking, as long as even the typing, I can tell you feel more energetic about it. So just think about your response. There's no perfect answer, but there's an answer that can encourage the other person to keep talking. Like I said, remember that the response will guide what the other person will continue to say, what they'll ask you, what the direction the conversation will go. And like I said, you might want to consider your relationship with the person. So if this isn't a friend or acquaintance, maybe you can make a sarcastic comment about the heat and the humidity. Or maybe you want to share something that you can make plans to hang out together. Consider how your response will influence the rest of the conversation. But basically, with all of these questions, and anytime you answer a question, you want to think about, what direction do you see the conversation going in? What direction is the conversation going to take? Would you like to talk more about summer? Would you like to talk about activities? Like I mentioned, would you like to talk about your favorite thing about Boston in the summer, or about New York, or about San Diego, or about London, or about Paris, or about Madrid? I'm just naming cities at this point. Tokyo, I don't know. Think about what you want to talk about. Maybe you want to focus on the city. Maybe your life is boring and you work all the time because you have to support your family. So maybe you want to talk more about things you like to do with your family every summer. Maybe you want to talk about your husband or your wife or your partner or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whoever, your friends. You want to talk about things you like to do with people. Judge the situation and respond accordingly. You might have a lot of things to say. So before I check back in with the chat box, if you asked me, what's your favorite thing to do in the summer? I kind of already gave the answer, but my favorite thing to do in the summer is to ride my bike, especially at night. And to be perfectly honest, my favorite thing to do in the summer in Boston is to go salsa dancing and then ride my bike home when the streets are empty, there's not a lot of cars, the weather is beautiful, the beautiful bike paths in Boston, and it's just one of my favorite memories because you just feel really alive. So as you notice, this type of response to the question is going to give you more information about me. I like salsa dancing, biking in the city, and it's also going to show that I really value feeling alive. I value the energy. I value appreciating using this wonderful body that the universe has given us, right? So this is something that you learn from me by my response to this question. If I say, oh, summer's too hot, I like to sit inside with a book. Okay, maybe I do like to read books, but I like to read books outside after biking to the park, right? So you can learn more about me from this question. And remember, after answering this question, you can always ask, what about you, right? Always ask, what about you? What about you, or how about you? What about you? What about you? We say it really fast. Or how about you? How about you? We ask this to turn the question to the other person. So how about you guys? You tell me what you think. So thank you guys so much for watching and for joining me. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It was a great start to my workday, and I look forward to seeing you guys in another live lesson soon. Once again, I'm Kim from EnglishWithKim.com. I'm your guide to the essential conversation skills you need to sound more natural in English. Have a good one. Goodbye.